I don't see it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners, presented by RotoBaller. How is everybody doing out there in YouTube land? Hey, listen, I did an episode similar to this last week and went over pretty good. I had a lot of people saying they wanted another episode like this, maybe with some of those tough choices in the mid rounds of draft day. So I did it for you. I got a few duos here we're going to talk our way through it. You guys can see where I'm coming from. And if I missed anybody you want to know about, like always, hit me up in the comments section. But for now, let's get into the list. All right, let's talk about a few wide receivers that are right around the 6th round-ish. I'm talking about Sammy Watkins and Will Fuller. Right now, Sammy Watkins' ADP is at 70. Will Fuller's at 72. So they're right there back-to-back almost. And if you need a wide receiver right here, these are two names that are being thrown around a lot. Listen, Watkins is healthy. Okay, last year, I don't even know what to tell you about last year. He was healthy in LA. They didn't really use him, though. He was more of a decoy, but he did have a sneaky 8 touchdowns last year to go along with 39 receptions and 593 yards. It's not horrible, and at least he's healthy now going into Chiefs camp. There's a lot of options in Kansas City. You got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, and the other 42 running backs on the roster to go along with the first-time starter of Patrick Mahomes. Now, a lot of people are thinking Kareem Hunt's going to get a lot of touches just because it's a new quarterback. Listen, Patrick Mahomes was drafted and brought there to throw the ball. Remember, at the time they drafted Mahomes, they didn't really have that trust in Alex Smith to throw the deep ball. Then all of a sudden, Alex Smith threw the deep ball last year, but by that point, they already had Mahomes. The guy is there to throw the ball. Sammy's another quick receiver. Not quite Tyreek Hill fast, but he has all the potential, to have a great season. Sammy's produced before, and that was in Buffalo. If he can stay healthy in a high-powered offense, Sammy may be one of the better Chiefs that I would choose on draft day because he's the cheapest part of that offense, and that offense has a ton of weapons and a ton of potential. I'm okay with Sammy Watkins if he's my wide receiver 3 or 4, but I don't really want him to be my number 2. Let's talk about Will Fuller now. Will Fuller's great. He's similar to Sammy Watkins. He's blazing fast, decent wide receiver, has a good, wide receiver opposite of him in DeAndre Hopkins. So the DeAndre Hopkins is taking all the top talent from the defensive side of the ball, and Will Fuller gets a lot of one-on-one coverage, which he thrives on. Here's the issue with Will Fuller. Last year, 28 receptions, 423 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And all those touchdowns were in the first 4 weeks of the season. That's kind of an issue. So, you know what? We can't just depend on Deshaun Watson to go out there and feed 2 touchdowns a game to Will Fuller. And I think a lot of people are expecting big things from Will Fuller, and he's capable of it. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing against Will Fuller, but I'm not buying the production from last year. That's not a pace that he can sustain. He's going to come back to earth, and hopefully he can stay healthy. Same thing as Sammy Watkins, though. I don't want him any more than my wide receiver 3 or 4. But if you're asking me which choice I'm making on draft day, if I have to choose between Sammy Watkins or Will Fuller, I'm going Sammy Watkins in that offense in Kansas City. He's the only piece in that offense that I really care to own, and I'll take a chance on him as my number 3. Let's move on to a couple of running backs. Let's talk about Derrick Henry and Alex Collins. Right now, they're both right around that 4th round ADP, so not quite mid-round. I'm sorry. I know. I can add. But you know what? These are 2 running backs that are being brought up a lot and whether they can be trusted. So let's talk about them for a second. Derrick Henry right now with an ADP of 42. Last year coming off 176 attempts, 744 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And listen, coming into the year, we were all excited for Derrick Henry because we thought it was going to be his show. With DeMarco Murray gone, we figured Derrick Henry would get the bulk of everything. And then Dion Lewis happened. And now we all kind of scratch our heads and say, well, what is Dion going to do? Because he's played in the league before, and he's run on 1st and 2nd down. Is he going to take things away from Derrick Henry? I don't know if you've seen pictures of these 2 in camp here recently, but them 2 walking side by side looks like Derrick Henry brought his kid to work. Dion Lewis is remarkably tiny standing next to Derrick Henry, and it shows. Now, why does that really matter? It doesn't really nowadays in the NFL, but Derrick Henry's there. He's going to get the bulk of the first 2 down running work, and he's going to get the goal line carries in an offense that's going to rely on the run from time to time. Listen, I do expect Corey Davis to take a small step forward, and they have a few weapons to work with Marcus Mariota. But let's go on to Alex Collins now, because I think Alex Collins is somebody who's just, I don't want to say being disrespected, but he's just kind of being looked past. Listen, the dude started dancing river dance and all of a sudden turned into a running back last year. Don't forget that. He had a decent year, 212 attempts, 973 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Right now, his current ADP of 46 puts him right in that range of the 4th round also. I love Alex Collins this year. We've already heard things coming out of a camp that Kenneth Dixon is dealing with injuries. More touches for Collins. Buck Allen is still there. He'll probably be relegated to 3rd down duty. And Collins is going to get a real opportunity to be the starting running back of the early down work in Baltimore. And it's great. I have no issues with Alex Collins. In fact, I see Alex Collins outproducing this ADP. If you can get Alex Collins as your number 2 or even your number 3 running back, put him at your flex. It's a solid lineup. Love Alex Collins. So if you can't tell yet, I think I'm going to lean slightly towards Alex Collins just because there's not that much competition for him right now in Baltimore. And that whole Dion Lewis role is just iffy. It's up in the air. We don't know for sure. I'm going Alex Collins. Let's do 2 more running backs. These guys are a little bit later. We're looking at about 7th, 8th round ADP. Talking about Marshawn Lynch or Kerryon Johnson. 2 names that are being brought up a lot here also lately to me. Lynch right now with an ADP of 79th overall. Last year had 207 carries, 891 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Not bad for an old beast mode. It's not great. Kerryon Johnson comes into Detroit. Being a rookie, pretty sure there's like 54 running backs in Detroit. I don't know what's going on in Detroit. They brought in LeGarrette Blount. Amir Abdullah is still underwhelming, every single year. Theo Riddick is relegated to the 3rd down work. And then they drafted Kerryon Johnson, and his current ADP is 81. So he's right there next to Lynch. And a lot of people like Kerryon Johnson. I like Kerryon Johnson too, if it were only Kerryon Johnson there. There's going to be all kinds of committee work going on in Detroit, and that just scares me. Not that Kerryon Johnson isn't talented. I just don't know if he's in the best situation. Now, Marshawn Lynch, same type of question mark, right? He's older. He's a little slower. He's still fun to watch. But then Oakland went out and got Doug Martin. And I know, trust me, I don't like Doug Martin that much either. I get it. But it was one of their top priorities in the offseason. John Gruden's got something for him. I mean, he likes himself some Doug Martin. And there's kind of a competition there in camp. I wouldn't be completely surprised if we don't get a 50-50 split to start the season. And if anything happens to Lynch and he can't stay healthy, this is Doug Martin's backfield, and he's running behind a top 10 offensive line. So it's a question, right? What do we do? Do we trust the old veteran in Lynch and just hope for the best and hope he stays healthy? Or we go to the rookie who's in a committee? Well, at this point in the draft, you're looking for value, right? You're kind of also looking for production. Can I get something out of this pick? And right now, starting week 1, I see more production coming from Marshawn Lynch. Nothing against Kerryon Johnson. All the Kerryon Johnson owners, I don't hate him. Okay, I like Kerryon Johnson. He's just not in the greatest situation to start the season. And that could change here in the preseason. He goes out there and kills it in the preseason. ADP is going to go up. He's going to get more expensive. But it'll be worth it because you're actually going to know what you're going to get out of him. Too many question marks for Kerryon Johnson right now. I'm going Marshawn Lynch. Let's go back to the wide receiver position right around the 7th, 8th round. Let's talk about Emmanuel Sanders or Devontae Parker. And a lot of you guys are out there saying, I'm not listening. Now, he's talking about Devontae Parker. I'm not listening. I don't want to listen to it either. I didn't even want to research. I didn't want to look at his name anymore. We've been down this road with Devontae Parker before, haven't we? I mean, like the last 2 years, every year is his breakout year, right? Well, right now his ADP is currently at 88. Last year had 57 receptions, 670 yards, and a whole 1 touchdown. Yeah, that was with Jay Cutler, and Jarvis Landry was there, so there's more targets up for grabs in Miami. I get it. Ryan Tannehill's coming back. Not overly excited about that, but whatever. And everybody's quick to crown Parker as being the one that's going to take up all those Jarvis Landry shares. If you're asking me, that's Kenny Stills' shares that are going to be boosted. Yes, Devontae Parker will get a few extra targets throughout the season, but Kenny Stills is the wide receiver to own here in Miami. Danny Amendola obviously will get some work, but he can't stay healthy for a whole season either. And Devontae Parker is going to be Devontae Parker. Listen, we can sit here and talk about him breaking out year in and year out. But if the guy just hasn't shown anything, I'm not going down that road anymore. So let's go back to Emmanuel Sanders now. Currently ADP of 84. A lot of wide receivers on the roster in Denver, but that offense is improved with Case Keenum. And I know, before last year, nobody wanted Case Keenum. He couldn't produce anything for the St. Louis Rams, which wasn't entirely his fault. Jeff Fisher is a horrible coach. That's a different story. But Emmanuel Sanders in camp has looked great. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the videos. He looks good. And he's still the number 2 receiver there in Denver. Demaryius Thomas is going to draw the defense's best option. And Emmanuel Sanders has always been somebody who's been productive when he can stay healthy. Last year he only had 47 receptions, 555 yards, and 2 touchdowns, but he wasn't healthy. If he can stay healthy, and that improved offense, with hopefully some resemblance of a running game again, with the rookie Royce Freeman and Devontae Booker, whatever, they could really produce some points in Denver, and Emmanuel Sanders could be an absolute steal at the 84th overall pick. So, this one's kind of easy for me. If I got to choose between Emmanuel Sanders and Devontae Parker's not getting anywhere near my fantasy roster. Give me Emmanuel Sanders. Let's talk about a couple tight ends. These guys have been talked about a lot here in the preseason. Talking about Trey Burton and George Kittle. Their ADPs are a little bit far apart, but as far as tight end rankings go, they're neck and neck. Right now, Burton's at an overall 94 and Kittle's at 124, so almost 3 rounds later for George Kittle. I can kind of see where this one is going, but we'll talk about it anyway. Listen, Trey Burton, he's in Chicago now. He looked great at the end of the year in Philadelphia, and everybody thinks because Matt Nagy is the coach of the Chicago Bears now that Trey Burton becomes Travis Kelce. That's not the case. Adam Shaheen is still there in Chicago, and he will get opportunities. He's already made plays in camp, and people are talking about him. Now, Trey Burton will probably get, first crack at the job, but I'm not ready to crown this offense yet. Listen, yes, they got Allen Robinson, and they have Taylor Gabriel, and they have Tariq Cohen, and they have Anthony Miller, and they have Jordan Howard. But Mitch Trubisky, not completely sold on him yet. Listen, there's games I saw him play last year where he only had single-digit pass attempts. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to think he's the greatest of all time and can just, dish out 50 passes a game to make all these guys fantasy relevant? I'm not ready to say that yet. I know how it is in Chicago in the wintertime. It's hard to throw. It's called the Windy City. It makes it a little bit difficult. I'm just not ready to say Trey Burton is the next Travis Kelce, and I think we're kind of overpaying slightly for him. Now, when you go to George Kittle, San Francisco didn't sign any big names in the offseason to take away targets from George Kittle. They have Pierre Garçon and Marquise Goodwin. They do have Jerick McKinnon in the backfield. But Kittle was one of Jimmy G's favorite targets towards the end of the year. He ended with 43 receptions, 515 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And like I said, you can get him almost 3 rounds later than Trey Burton. So he doesn't have anybody really to compete with. He has a quarterback capable of feeding him targets. And we already know the quarterback likes him. It sounds like an easy pick for me. I'm waiting the 3 rounds. I'm going George Kittle. Huge upside, huge touchdown upside from George Kittle. I love some George Kittle this year. Let's end it on a couple quarterbacks, one which I just talked about. It's Jimmy G and Matthew Stafford. Right now, Jimmy G's ADP is at 96 and Stafford's at 98, so they're right there next to each other. But which one do we choose here? Jimmy G's been the hot name this offseason, right? Everybody's talking about Jimmy G and how great he's going to be. And he is. He's a good quarterback. Leading San Francisco to those 5 straight wins, it was awesome to watch. Had 1,560 yards and 7 touchdowns in 5 games last year. Didn't add any big threat weapons there for Jimmy G. They got Jerick McKinnon in the backfield, and they drafted Dante Pettis. 2 pieces which I really like. I don't know if Jimmy G has enough firepower in that offense, though, to put up huge fantasy numbers. I do think that they win more games than San Francisco, and I think that Jimmy G has a great year. I just don't know if he has a highly productive year as far as fantasy numbers goes. And then we go to Matthew Stafford, who's done nothing but always put up huge fantasy numbers. One of the most consistent top 10 quarterbacks there is for fantasy football. Had 4,446 yards last year and 29 touchdowns. Yes, there's a new offense going to be coming there to Detroit, but it's Matt Patricia from New England, who's always had a pretty good offense, so I'm sure he learned a thing or two there. They have a ton of running backs there, but they're going to throw the ball with Matthew Stafford. It's Matthew Stafford. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Everybody loves Marvin Jones on the outside and Golden Tate. Kenny Galladay takes a step forward. And listen, the deciding factor to me, Eric Ebron no longer plays there. Eric Ebron just knows how to ruin everything. So it's got to get better for Matthew Stafford. I see big numbers again, 4,000 plus yards, and close to that 30 touchdown mark for Matthew Stafford. If I had to choose between these two, I'm going Matthew Stafford. All right, so those were a few mid-round choices, some tough choices we got to make here in the mid-rounds. But like usual, I could have put a ton of people in here. I'm not trying to take up your whole day watching one YouTube video. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and make sure you comment down below if there's other guys in these middle rounds that you want to talk about or you want to hear about. I've been getting a lot of comments and a lot of questions lately, and I love all of them. I try to answer every single one of them as quickly as possible. I know there's a few of you guys that sent me questions at 3 o'clock in the morning the other night, and I answered them. It's what I like to do. I like to interact with you guys. I really appreciate the feedback. Love talking to you guys. If there's something you don't agree with, don't just hit the thumbs down. Say what it is. Disagree with me, but you don't have to dislike the video. Really appreciate all the support, though. Channel's been growing like crazy. Make sure you guys go check out my other channel also. If you're looking for a little bit more detailed analysis, go over to the RotoBaller channel. Myself and Kyle Richardson do a show over there where we get a little bit more in-depth with these guys. And hey, check it out. Subscribe over there. Lots of good things coming there. Also, really appreciate the support once again, everybody. Really look forward to talking to you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.